On March 31st, 2026, the Federal Bureau of Investigation issued a public service announcement that they did not send to your phone. They did not put it on your lock screen. They did not push it through any notification system. They issued it the way government agencies issue warnings that they need to technically say they said, through an official channel that reaches journalists and security researchers and almost nobody else. The warning was about your smartphone, about the apps on it, about a legal mechanism in a foreign country that means certain apps you use every single day can be compelled by a government you never elected to hand over your contacts, your location history, your private messages, your browsing behavior, and your biometric data, with no warrant requirement, no judicial oversight, and no obligation to ever tell you it happened. This is not a hypothetical. It is not a theoretical risk based on worst-case assumptions. It is the documented, legal, operational reality of how certain countries' national security laws interact with the apps their companies build and deploy on your phone. The FBI said so in writing, and then most people never heard about it. Until now. Let's go through exactly what the warning says, exactly which apps it covers, exactly what the hidden mechanism is that enables this, and exactly what you need to turn off right now to reduce your exposure before you put this phone down today. Let's start with the warning itself, because the specific language of an FBI PSA matters, and the actual text is more precise, and in some ways more alarming, than most of the media coverage of it conveyed. On March 31st, 2026, the FBI issued a public service announcement warning that many of the most popular apps on American phones, apps used every single day, are built by Chinese companies and may be funneling personal data straight to servers where the Chinese government can legally demand access to it. No warrant, no judicial oversight. No way to say no. The PSA stated specifically that the FBI has warned smartphone users about the security risks associated with foreign-developed mobile apps frequently used in the U.S. scheme, noting that many of the most downloaded and top-grossing apps in the United States are developed and maintained by foreign companies, particularly those based in China. The key phrase in that warning is, legally demand access. This is not about hackers. This is not about data breaches. This is about a legal structure. China's national intelligence law, passed in 2017, and the cybersecurity law that preceded it, that requires any Chinese company and any company operating within China's jurisdiction to cooperate with Chinese state intelligence and security agencies on demand. The cooperation requirement is not optional. It is not subject to negotiation. It cannot be refused on grounds of user privacy or business ethics. If a Chinese intelligence agency issues a demand to a Chinese technology company for user data, that company is legally required to comply, and it is legally prohibited from disclosing to users that the demand was made. The data transfer happens. The user never knows. And because the servers holding the data may be located in China rather than in a jurisdiction where U.S. courts can issue protective orders, the normal legal mechanisms that American users might rely on to protect their data are simply inapplicable. Chinese national security laws require developers to share user data with the government, potentially exposing contacts, location, browsing history, and biometrics. Data can be stored locally on your device or on servers in China for as long as developers choose to keep it. That last detail, stored for as long as developers choose, means that data collected by a Chinese-developed app today is potentially available to Chinese intelligence agencies, not just now, but indefinitely into the future. A location history collected in 2024, sitting on servers in China in 2026, is accessible to a Chinese government intelligence demand in 2030. With exactly the same legal framework and exactly the same absence of recourse for the user whose data it is. Now let's talk about the specific apps the warning applies to, because the FBI's PSA was deliberately broad in its language. The official PSA didn't name specific apps. The FBI rarely does. But the categories and the specific examples that security researchers and journalists identified immediately after the PSA's release are well documented. The first and most prominent category is short-form video and entertainment platforms. TikTok is the most discussed, but its situation in 2026 has a specific nuance that deserves accurate treatment. TikTok's US operations shifted to a joint venture with Oracle, Silver Lake, and MGX in early 2026, making TikTok technically majority American-owned in the US. CapCut and Lemon 8 fall under the same arrangement. Whether that's enough to address the FBI's concerns is genuinely unclear. The FBI's warning was issued after that deal was already in place, which tells you something. The FBI issuing a warning about Chinese-developed apps after TikTok's structural transfer to American ownership is a significant signal that the agency's concern is not resolved by corporate ownership restructuring. It extends to questions about development team access, code integrity, and data architecture that ownership changes do not necessarily address. The second category, and arguably the one with the highest practical risk for users who think they are protecting themselves, is Chinese-owned VPN applications. There are concerns about a whole category of Chinese-owned VPN apps that many Americans use, thinking they're protecting their privacy, when they may actually be doing the opposite. A 2025 report found Apple and Google were allowing VPNs owned by Chinese companies on their platforms with almost no transparency about where the data goes. A VPN virtual private network is specifically designed to route all of your device's internet traffic through a private server, ostensibly to encrypt it and protect it from surveillance. A VPN, owned by a Chinese company and operating under Chinese law, routes all of your internet traffic. Every website you visit, every message you send through unencrypted channels, every file you download, through infrastructure that its operators are legally required to make available to Chinese intelligence agencies on demand. A Chinese VPN is not a privacy tool. It is, under the best possible reading, a privacy risk. Under the worst possible reading, it is a surveillance pipeline that you installed on your own device and are actively paying for. The free VPN category is the most concerning because it attracts users specifically on the basis of cost. Users who may be more security conscious than average, having sought out a VPN in the first place, but who chose a free option without investigating ownership. Many of the most widely downloaded free VPN applications on both the Apple App Store and Google Play Store are owned by companies headquartered in China or Hong Kong, with ultimate corporate ownership traceable to mainland Chinese parent entities. The country of incorporation of the immediate app developer is not always the right ownership indicator. Corporate structures that place the operational entity in a jurisdiction like Hong Kong or the Cayman Islands while maintaining ultimate ownership in mainland China have been documented among VPN providers specifically. The third category is AI applications, specifically the DeepSeek AI app. There are also concerns about DeepSeek, a Chinese AI app. DeepSeek emerged as a significant story in early 2026 because of its competitive capabilities relative to American AI models. And it attracted substantial user adoption precisely because of those capabilities. But a conversation AI model with DeepSeek involves sharing the content of your queries, your questions, your documents, the context you provide, with servers operated by a Chinese company subject to the legal framework we have been discussing. The same queries you might feel comfortable asking a Western AI company are, in the DeepSeek context, queries whose content is potentially accessible to Chinese intelligence agencies on demand. The fourth category is utility and productivity apps. Browser apps, file manager apps, keyboard apps, cleaner apps, battery optimizer apps, where Chinese ownership is less prominently disclosed, but where the data access the app requires is extensive. A keyboard app with Chinese ownership, for instance, has access to every character you type on your phone, every password you enter, every message you write, every search you perform, before that input reaches any other application. The access a keyboard has to your device is in some ways more comprehensive than the access any other application has, because it sits at the input layer of everything you do. And yet many users have never investigated the ownership or privacy practices of the keyboard application on their phone. Now let's talk about the hidden mechanism that makes all of this possible, and that the title refers to, the specific setting that enables the data access these apps exploit. This is not one single setting with one specific name. It is a combination of permissions that collectively grant applications access to the categories of data the FBI's warning specifically names. Understanding each permission and what it enables is what allows you to audit your phone intelligently rather than simply deleting apps based on country of origin alone. The first and most critical permission category is background location. As we discussed in the previous episode about background app processes, location access granted as all the time means the app can determine your physical location continuously, even when you're not using it, building a comprehensive record of where you go, when you go there, how long you stay, and what patterns emerge over days and weeks. Location history is specifically named in the FBI's PSA as one of the data categories at risk. Any Chinese-developed app with all-the-time location access has continuous access to one of the most personally revealing categories of information that exists on your device. The second permission category is contacts. An application with contacts access can read the names, phone numbers, email addresses, and other details of everyone in your address book. For individual users, this represents their personal social network. For business users, it represents client lists, colleague networks, and professional relationships. For government employees, military personnel, intelligence community members, or anyone adjacent to sensitive professional environments, a contacts list is a map of professional relationships that a foreign intelligence service would find extremely valuable. The FBI's concern about contacts access in the PSA is not hypothetical. Foreign intelligence collection of social and professional network data is a documented intelligence methodology. The third permission category is microphone and camera access. An app with microphone permission can, when it is active, and in some cases when it is running in the background, access audio from your device's microphone. An app with camera permission can access the camera. The background audio surveillance concern, where an app listens to ambient conversations while appearing to be inactive on screen, is one that security researchers have investigated and found evidence of in specific cases, though it is not a universally documented behavior. The legitimate concern is more straightforwardly about an app's access to the microphone for features that require it voice interfaces, audio messaging, recording functions, and whether that access is scoped appropriately to the feature's actual requirements. The fourth permission category is storage and photo library access. An app with broad storage access on Android or photo library access on iOS can read the contents of files and photos on your device. Photos contain metadata, specifically geolocation data embedded in the image file by your camera that reveals where the photo was taken, creating a historical location record even for users who have denied explicit location permissions. Photos themselves contain personally identifying information about you, your family members, your home, your workplace, and your activities. Storage access extends to documents, downloads, and other files that may contain sensitive personal or professional information. The fifth permission category, and the one that is most specifically the hidden setting the title refers to, is the data sharing and analytics settings within individual apps, which in many cases control whether the app transmits behavioral data, usage analytics, and other collected information to servers controlled by the developer. These settings are not standardized across apps. Each developer implements them differently, names them differently, and buries them at different depths within the app's own settings interface. Some apps call this section privacy. Some call it data and personalization. Some call it analytics. Some do not expose it through a user-facing settings screen at all, relying instead on the terms of service accepted at installation. Finding and disabling these settings within each app is the most direct action you can take to reduce what a specific app transmits, though it requires trust that the app actually honors these settings, a trust that the FBI's PSA is specifically questioning for apps developed by companies operating under Chinese law. So let's go through exactly what you do right now on your phone, working through each of these categories systematically. The first step is the app ownership audit. For the most significant apps on your phone, the ones you use most frequently and that have the broadest permissions, investigate who actually owns the company that developed the app. This is not always immediately visible from the app's name or branding. The Google Play Store and Apple App Store both show the developer name on the app's listing page. Searching for that developer name, combined with the term ownership or parent company or headquarters, usually surfaces the corporate ownership information quickly. Specific apps to prioritize for this audit include any free VPN you have installed, any free utility apps whose business model is not obvious, any AI chatbot or assistant app other than those from major US companies, and any entertainment or social platform whose primary user base is outside the United States. The second step is the location permission audit. On Android, navigate to Settings, then Location, then App Permissions. Review every app listed as having all the time location access, and ask whether each one has a legitimate functional need for that level of access. For any app developed by a Chinese company or whose ownership is unclear, change the permission to while using the app only or deny if the app's core function does not require location. On iPhone, navigate to Settings, then Privacy and Security, then Location Services, and perform the same review, changing any suspicious app from always to while using the app or never. The third step is the Contacts Permission Review. On Android, go to Settings, then Privacy, then Permission Manager, then Contacts. Review every app with contacts access and revoke it for any app that has no clear functional need for your contact list. A social media app that wants to find friends you know is requesting contacts for feature purposes that serve its user growth metrics more than they serve you. A utility or entertainment app with contacts access has almost no legitimate justification. On iPhone, Settings, then Privacy and Security, then Contacts shows the same information with the same controls. The fourth step is microphone and camera permission review, applying the same methodology. Settings, then Privacy, then Permission Manager on Android, Settings, then Privacy and Security on iPhone. For any app that has microphone or camera access that you did not deliberately grant for a feature you actively use, revoke it. The permission can always be re-granted if the app requests it for a legitimate purpose in the future. The fifth step is storage and photo library access review. On Android, this is found under Files and Media in the Permission Manager. On iPhone, it is under Photos and Privacy and Security. Photo library access specifically should be limited to the apps that have a genuine need to access your photos, your camera app, your photo editing apps, apps to which you deliberately choose to share photos. For any other app, particularly those with unclear ownership, restrict photo access to selected photos rather than all photos if your platform supports that option, or deny it entirely. The sixth step is specifically addressing VPN applications. If you use a free VPN, research its ownership right now before taking another step. If it is owned by a Chinese company or has opaque ownership that traces to China, delete it. The protection a VPN is supposed to provide is completely negated and potentially inverted into active surveillance if the VPN operator is subject to Chinese data access laws. For users who genuinely need VPN protection, paid VPN services from companies headquartered in privacy-respecting jurisdictions, Switzerland, Iceland, or established U.S. companies with verifiable no-log audit records, provide genuine protection rather than the false security of an adversarially owned privacy tool. The seventh step is the data sharing settings review within apps you choose to keep. For each app that remains installed after your ownership and permission audits, navigate to that app's own settings and look for sections labeled Privacy, Data, Analytics, Personalization, or Add Preferences. Within these sections, disable every data sharing and analytics option available. As noted, this requires trusting the app to honor these settings. For apps developed by companies under Chinese law, that trust is specifically what the FBI's PSA is calling into question. But disabling these settings is still the appropriate step, both because some apps do honor them and because the absence of the setting being disabled is affirmative consent to sharing that you have not given. The eighth step is the action that the FBI's PSA most directly recommended. The FBI warns, disable unnecessary data sharing, and adds, data security risks are not specific to only mobile apps or those which are foreign developed. That last line deserves its own moment of attention because it prevents the easy misreading of this warning as solely a geopolitical concern about China. The FBI is specifically saying that data sharing risks exist across all apps, not just foreign developed ones. The Chinese ownership dimension is a specific aggravating factor because it adds a legal compulsion element that domestic apps do not face, but the underlying data access practices that create vulnerability are present in the broader app ecosystem. The systematic permission audit we have been walking through protects you against the broader risk, not just the specific Chinese ownership dimension. Let's also address the phone software update dimension, because it connects directly to the FBI and NSA warnings and represents a distinct but related risk that compounds the app data risk. More than half of all smartphones are now running outdated software, missing the latest fixes from Apple and Google. That means the update warnings issued in recent months, as attacks are discovered and patched, have been ignored. Millions of phones are now at risk. An outdated phone operating system is a phone with known security vulnerabilities that have been publicly disclosed, meaning both security researchers and attackers know exactly where the weak points are. An app with malicious intent operating on an outdated OS has a meaningfully larger attack surface to exploit than the same app on a fully patched device. Keeping your phone's operating system updated, a step that has nothing to do with individual app permissions, is the foundational security action that makes every other step in this process more effective. The FBI has warned smartphone users about the security risks associated with foreign developed mobile apps frequently used in the US. That warning exists in official government documentation right now. It was issued by the same agency responsible for domestic security intelligence. It was not issued casually or without evidentiary basis. The legal framework it describes, compelled data sharing without judicial oversight, indefinite data retention, no disclosure obligation to users, is real, documented, and enforced in the jurisdiction that governs the development of a significant number of the apps on American phones right now. The setting you need to turn off is not one setting with one name. It is the accumulation of permissions, data sharing options, and app access grants that collectively constitute your phone's openness to the data collection practices that the FBI warned about. Each one you revoke is a door you close. Each unnecessary permission that remains is a door that stays open, not just to the developer who built the app, but potentially to any government that developer is legally required to answer to. Your phone knows where you sleep. It knows where you work. It knows who you call and who calls you. It knows what you search for when you think no one is looking. It knows your face and your voice. It has access to documents and photos that represent the most private archive of your daily life that has ever existed in human history. The FBI issued a public warning that specific categories of apps on your phone can be compelled to share all of that with a foreign government. That warning deserves more than a moment of concern and a return to scrolling. It deserves the 30 minutes it takes to do the audit we just walked through. Do it today. The permissions are there. The controls are real. And the warning that made it necessary is sitting in the FBI's public records right now, written in plain English, waiting for the people it was meant to reach.